Jessica Thompson. I am a clinician with BAMC, currently with CBFS, soon to be ACCS. And I'll be talking to you guys a little bit about motivational interviewing. Did everybody get a handout? I think everybody did. Okay. So, a little bit of just an introduction for today. The purpose of this is just to learn basic skills with motivational interviewing. And hopefully that you'll be able to carry those on to whatever job role you have, or even in your own life too. You guys will see that there's some skill sets that you'll learn today that you can carry over. I have 2 children and it works especially well with them, so you guys can try it out. So let's see, you guys were told we'll get a little bit of a break. Alright, so go ahead and get started. And I apologize ahead of time, I am not tech savvy at all, so just give me a minute with all this stuff. Alright, so what is motivational interviewing? It's a collaborative, meaning working together, goal-oriented style of communication with particular attention to the language of change. And we're going to talk a lot about change talk and what that looks like, so you can be cued into when your clients are giving you a hint that they're ready to make that change. It is designed to strengthen personal motivation for and commitment to a specific goal by eliciting and exploring the person's own reasons for change within an atmosphere of acceptance and compassion. So that's the basic idea of it, what it encompasses, and of course we'll go into far more detail. So, let's see. One thing I just like to start off with is a fun little video of what we should not be doing as clinicians and workers within the health field. And this is where you will see my lack of skills with the internet. Alright. Some of you might have seen this.
Dr. Switzer?
Yes, come in. I'm just washing my hands.
I'm Catherine Bigman. Janet Carlisle referred me.
Oh, yes.
Sorry if you can't hear it too well.
Still being buried alive in a box.
Yes, that's me.
See, this is what I'm talking about, the tech stuff.
Oh no, we don't do that anymore. Just have a seat. And let me tell you a bit about our billing. I charge $5 for the first 5 minutes, and then absolutely nothing after that. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Too good to be true, as a matter of fact.
Well, I can almost guarantee you that our session won't last the full 5 minutes. Now, we don't do any insurance billing, so you would either have to pay in cash or by check.
Wow, okay.
And I don't make change.
All right.
And go.
Go.
Well, tell
What?
me about the problem that you wish to address.
Oh, okay. Well, I have this fear of being buried alive in a box. I start thinking about being buried alive and I begin to panic.
Has anyone ever tried to bury you alive in a box?
No, but truly thinking about it does make my life horrible. I mean, I can't go through tunnels or be in an elevator or in a house, anything boxy.
So what you're saying is you're claustrophobic.
Yes, that's it.
All right, well, let's go, Catherine. I'm going to say 2 words to you right now. I want you to listen to them very, very carefully. Then I want you to take them out of the office with you and incorporate them into your life.
Shall I write them down?
Well, if it makes you comfortable, it's just 2 words. We find most people can remember them.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay, here they are. Stop it!
I'm sorry?
Stop it!
Stop it?
Yes, S-T-O-P, new word, I-T.
So, what are you saying?
You know, it's funny. I say two simple words, and I cannot tell you the amount of people who say exactly the same thing you're saying. I mean, this is not Yiddish, Catherine. This is English. Stop it.
So I should just stop it.
There you go. I mean, you don't want to go through life being scared of being buried alive in a box, do you? I mean, that sounds frightening.
It is.
Then stop it.
I can't. I mean, it's been with me since childhood.
No, we don't go there. Just stop.
So I should just stop being afraid of being buried alive in a box.
You got it. Good go. Well, it's only been 3 minutes, so that will be $3.
But I only have a 5, so
Well, I don't make change.
then I guess I'll take the full 5 minutes.
Fine. All right. Well, what other problems would you like to address?
I'm bulimic. I stick my fingers down my throat.
Stop it! Nut of some kind? Don't do that.
But I'm compelled to. My mom used to call me fat.
No. No, we don't go there.
But I've been always doing.
No, we don't go there either.
But my horoscope did say.
We definitely don't go there. Just stop it. What else?
Well, I have self-destructive relationships with men.
Stop it! You want to be with a man, don't you?
Yes.
Well, then stop it. Don't be such a big baby.
I wash my hands a lot.
That's all right.
It is.
I wash my hands all the time. And there's a lot of germs out there. Yeah, don't worry about that one.
I'm afraid to drive.
Well, stop it! How are you going to get around? Get in the car and drive, you kook.
Stop it! You stop it!
What's the problem, Catherine?
I don't like this. I don't like this therapy at all. You're just telling me to stop it.
And you don't like that?
No, I don't.
So you think we're moving too fast? Is that it?
Yes. Yes, I do.
All right, then let me give you 10 words that I think will clear everything up for you. You want to get a pad and a pencil for this one?
All right.
Are you ready? All right, here are the 10 words. Stop it or I'll bury you alive in a box!
I always like that video. It's a fun little way to start off. And it gives you an idea. Now it wants to be loud. I think what some people have these preconceived notions of what we do with clients. It brings to light how a lot of people might lack empathy, sympathy, things like that. Again, things we will touch on. Sorry, I'm just trying to get the... Did the PowerPoint come back up? Where is it?
Help me find the PowerPoint.
Yeah, I'm just looking for the PowerPoint. Oh, there we go. Thanks. Okay. All right. So does anybody know by chance who these two gentlemen are? Probably not, because I didn't either. Who these guys are is on the left you have Tenzing Norgay. He's a Sherpa, or was he, has since passed, and Sir Edmund Hillary. And they were the very first two people known to summit Mount Everest, and that was in 1953. So I'll give you a little bit of their story and then tie it into what it has to do with motivational interviewing. So Sir Edmund Hillary had hiked many mountains, wanted Mount Everest. Everybody who's a hiker wants to do Mount Everest. He was an expert climber, but knew he couldn't do this alone. So he gathered a team of Sherpas, with Tenzing being the head Sherpa. And they climbed Mount Everest, about 100 feet before the summit. The rest of the team stayed behind, and these two went on to the summit. At the very top, Sir Edmund Hillary, knowing how to use a camera, took a picture of Sergey, Tenzing Sergey, and well, he took this picture, and when they came down, everybody wants to know who was the very first to step foot, kind of like the whole man on the moon thing. Who was the very first to step foot on the summit of Mount Everest for the first time ever? And they kept it a secret for years and years and years and years. People said, well, Sir Hillary, why did you take the picture? Why didn't Norgay take the picture? And he had this ongoing joke that at whatever the height of the summit is, you don't want to learn how to use a camera. He's the only one that knew how to use a camera. So that was the reason he took the picture, and Norgay was the one standing with the flag at the top. So years and years go by. Sir Edmund Hillary passes away. I think it was 2008. And in an interview, Norgay finally came and said that Sir Edmund Hillary was the first to step on the summit. So the point of me telling you guys this story is how it relates to motivational interviewing. In motivational interviewing, we need to take a step back and realize we're not the experts. Our clients are the experts, but they need our help to get there. And that's the analogy to this is Sir Edmund Hillary knew he was an expert climber, but he needed help to get to the top. So they needed to have that teamwork. And you know, both those climbers were experts, but they needed each other to get to the top. So I hope that kind of is just an idea that you keep in the back of your mind as we go through this today. What I'd like you to do is just kind of think of maybe a client you currently work with or have worked with in the past that has been resistant to change, ambivalent, maybe seems stuck. To take it a step further, it might even be better if you think of issues in your own life that you've had. Maybe you've struggled and was torn with the ideas of quitting smoking, starting an exercise program, getting a divorce on a higher scale. And as we go through today, just kind of keep those in the back of your mind and use the skills that you learned today and see what you can do with it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is change talk. And what that is, it's just basically any language expressed by your client that's an argument for change. It might not be totally clear at first. It might not be clear for a long time. But you'll start to pick up on keywords, phrases, things like that, gestures that let you know that they're ready to move past that ambivalence and get going with the next part. So change talk is broken into two parts. You have your preparatory change talk, which is preparing for your change. And there's 4 kinds. Motivational interviewing is really big on acronyms. So if you look down, you'll see darn cat, and that's just one way to remember it. So desire statements, you'll hear things like, I want to lose weight. I want to quit smoking. So they have that desire. It's definitely a component of change, but they can still change without even wanting to. They might not even realize that they're doing it. So you might never hear that desire statement, but it's there. And you'll start to be able to pick up on those things. You have ability statements like, I could or I would, but. So it tells you how they feel, like it brings in that ambivalence where they're stuck. They won't build motivation if they think it's impossible. So for example, somebody who has a desire to start an exercise program with running, you wouldn't necessarily suggest, the Boston Marathon's in April, why don't you give that a try? Their ability is not there. You're going to start smaller scale, more manageable, more reasonable for them. Oh, and if at any point you guys have questions, please just interrupt me and raise your hand. Otherwise, I'll just keep going and going. Reason statements. So I'd possibly have more energy if I exercise. That would be a reason to do it. It doesn't necessarily imply desire or ability, but it does give a reason. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're there yet, but they're starting to formulate the reasons in their head for a good reason to change. Let's see. Then we have need statements. So I need to, I must, I can't keep going on like this. So that's going to stress their importance or urgency of needing to change. I overheard earlier when Dr. Russ was here, it sounded a little bit like a DCF case involved. I need to stop using drugs or my kids are going to get taken away. So again, they might not be ready. They know they need to change. It doesn't mean they're ready to change. Again, so those need statements don't have desire or ability in them. So far, does that kind of make sense a little bit? Okay. Then you have mobilizing statements, and those are statements that say, I'm ready to go ahead and make this change, and that's the CAT, C-A-T. So you have commitment, so that signals like the likelihood of change, making promises, contracts, so I promise, I swear, I guarantee, things like that. So imagine if you were in court, the judge is going to say, do you swear? So that would be a commitment statement. You wouldn't answer with like, I want to, no, you have to, I swear, or I will. Then you have activation. So they're on their way towards action, but they're not quite ready yet. So there's no definite contract, but they're leaning that way, like I'm willing to, I'm ready. So that implies commitment, but they're not quite ready yet. They're getting there. And then taking steps. This kind of talk indicates that the person has already done something. So, hey, I went to the store and I bought running shoes. I talked to my doctor about getting the patch for quitting smoking. So those are actually taking the steps to make that change. So, okay. In talking a little bit about, let's see, motivational interviewing, we have a big component of motivational interviewing called the spirit. And I'll definitely go more into that, obviously, because it's an important part. But it's embracing the whole concept of empathy, understanding, compassion, acceptance, things like that. So Terry Moyer was one of the founders of motivational interviewing. And I'm blanking on the name. Miller was, Terry Moyer and Miller were the two founders of MI. So we're gonna watch a quick video, and what I want you to see with her, she has this gentleman come in who is a smoker, and you'll see her go through this session. I think it's about 15 minutes of him saying, I love smoking, to, hey, I think I might be ready to quit. And just kind of listen for the darn cat throughout, and see if you notice or pick up on anything of what we just went over. So let's see if I can escape. Hopefully you guys will be able to hear it.
Richard, you've agreed to come in today and talk to me a little bit about your smoking. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, I was thinking about this before we were talking about it, that if I were able to sit down right now and have a cigarette, I would. Because I like to smoke.
So being in front of the camera makes you feel like you want to have a cigarette?
Actually, my whole life is based around a cigarette. I mean, I get in my car, I smoke a cigarette. If I'm, of course, in radio or in other fields, you can't usually smoke in your job, so you have to take those breaks. But in the older days, I used to be able to smoke anywhere. So it makes it a little bit tougher. But yeah, if I could have a cigarette right now, I would.
It's that much a part of your life that you feel like you would have one even right now?
Absolutely, and I think you find yourself going out at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night to go to the store to grab a pack of cigarettes when you smoke, because it's what you need. Physically need it, but you also like it because you enjoy it.
Right. There's a part of you that really enjoys smoking.
Right. And then there's a part that says you really don't want to, or you shouldn't. And it has nothing to do with people saying you can't. It's the fact that after a period of time, you start the flavor, the taste, the problems, that becomes an issue.
On the one hand, you really like it, and the
Just give it a quick second. Are you still connected?
You need to check the internet, maybe?
Are you still connected?
I am on my hotspot,
Ah.
so you could have the internet. Sometimes it'll like click off for a minute and then come back on.
I'm sorry, guys. Just a second. All right. I guess I'll try to come back to that. I apologize. It's a good video to see the difference and the change. It's okay. Okay. So, let's see. What is motivational interviewing? So, like I started to speak about, you have the spirit, and that's the stance used to approach the conversation, and it's the way we treat the person. You have skills, type of things that we say to the person, and we'll learn a little bit about that today, skills that you can use, and strategies, which are the techniques we use to draw out and explore the person's reasons for change. Okay. Motivational interviewing is more than a set of techniques for doing counseling. It's a way of being with people. Again, spirit is very important, and it's made up of 4 parts. You have partnership, acceptance, compassion, and evocation. Again, acronym PACE. They really like that. So the first part of motivational interviewing is comprised of partnership. And it's basically a collaboration between 2 experts, the person and the helper. So they call clinicians, mental health workers, the helper. It's usually what you'd be referred to. It's dancing and not wrestling. So that's one of the analogies I like. It's moving with the person. It's not a struggle. It should be smooth. It's not a fight with them. It's not putting your 2 cents in or your opinions or your thoughts. It's meeting them where they're at. Very important with motivational interviewing. The helper avoids creating the impression that he or she has all the answers. Again, we're not the expert in these people's lives. They're their own expert, and they just need us to help them get to the summit. The helper suppresses his or her writing reflex. I think a lot of us went into this profession because we want to fix things. We want to help people. We want to make things right. Again, keeping in the back of your mind that we are not the expert, and it's not our job to fix things for them. It's not our job to make things right. I know in my 11 years of doing this, I still want to fix things and make things right for them. So taking that step back. The helper is aware of and honest about their own values or agendas. This can be tricky at times. You could have a client who is using drugs and their child was taken away. And it's very quick to say, just stop it. Stop using those drugs. Aren't your children more important? Taking that step back. And really getting in tune with yourself. And if that means you need to speak with your supervisor just to have some clarity, or even sometimes transferring a client to somebody else that might be able to help them a little bit more. The helper is profoundly respectful of the person. So again, the topics that come up might strike a chord with you. So it's just important, again, to put your own beliefs and your own agenda aside and transfer the client if needed, if you're able to. Continuing on with partnership. It can be expressed by saying things like, I'd like to work with you on this. You know yourself and the problem much better than I do. And I know things that have worked for others and some of the research that bears on this. How do you see this? What do you think is going on here? What ideas do you have about how to approach this? And you're the expert on what will work for you. So A in PACE, acceptance. So this doesn't necessarily mean that you approve of the person's actions. And if you're truly practicing the spirit, your approval or disapproval is really quite irrelevant. So in acceptance, you have absolute worth. The helper regards the person with unconditional positive regard, no judgment. This empowers growth and change. Accurate empathy, the helper strives to see the person's world through the person's eyes. Can anybody tell me the difference between empathy and sympathy?
Sympathy, you feel bad for someone, and empathy, you put yourself in their shoes.
Good, yep, and there's a big difference. We'll watch if the internet's up, a really short video that I love that really kind of lays that out, the difference. Let's see. Autonomy support, the helper acknowledges the person's right to self-direction and choice. This reduces defensiveness and discord. So again, we might not agree with their choices, but we do have to accept them. Affirmation, the helper identifies and notes the person's strengths and efforts. This helps to improve the person's sense of self-efficacy. So let's see. Wish me well on this.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
So I like how she depicts the difference between empathy and sympathy. Does anybody have any thoughts or comments just on how she presents it? Feel free just to talk out because I found my PowerPoint. Okay. No? Okay. Let's see. All right, so continuing on with acceptance, it can be expressed by saying things like, what to do about this is really up to you. You're right, no one else can make you change if you don't want to. And don't follow it with a but. When you have a statement and you follow it with a but, whatever you say after just totally negates and crosses off what you said to begin with. Whether, I don't know if you have spouses or significant others and you're in the middle of an argument and they say something like, you did the dishwasher, but, okay, well, obviously now you're just telling them that it's irrelevant that they emptied the dishwasher because you still have something more negative to say. We've all done it, I'm sure. Or by using reflective statements, which we'll go over and learn a little bit about, and then affirmations. The other component of the spirit is compassion. The helper seeks the best interest of the person and works for the benefit of the person, not the helper. To be compassionate is to actively promote others' welfare and to give priority to the other's needs, which is hard. Again, taking a step back and realizing it's not about you. So what I'd like to do, where did I put them? Here they are. I have 3 quotes. Could you guys try to form 3 groups, maybe like 1 group here as even as possible, and then 2 and 3? I'll give you guys a second to move around. I don't really care how you guys do it, just 3 somewhat even groups. Thank you. If it's easier, we can count. Okay, this is kind of like 1 group, maybe that, and some people join like these 2 tables. I was going to do the whole count by 3 thing. Are we struggling? Yeah. All right.
We just need 2 people from that table.
Yeah. So really, it's just like perfect. All right. So.
Oh, I'm not sure. It makes it look a little open. I'll go over.
All right. Do I have 3 sort of groups? Thank you guys. I'll merge you guys somehow. All right. You guys will take this. So what I'm passing out is 3 different quotes, all dealing with compassion. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to read it over, discuss it amongst your group, and then we'll come together. And then this is 1 giant group. Thank you.
It will be later.
If there's not enough, just because of the numbers of the group, if you don't mind just looking over your shoulders. Okay, it's 3 different quotes. But thank you. Yeah. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to read it over and just discuss it amongst your group, and then we'll come together. If there's extras, I'll just gather them at the end.
Especially at the end, I think if every one of us hadn't had somebody show us compassion, we probably wouldn't know this thing. And I what she said, how is that type of thing? I like it, not with suffering, but we don't others. Like with suffering, I think that just doesn't.
Oh, that's what I got.
Yeah, sharing.
And I think this is true as well, saying, like, you don't want to take something and you can't.
Be supportive. The worst is, oh, I need exactly what you feel, or exactly what you're going through. I lost a lot of friendships for that statement.
Because I feel like that was such a go-to. Oh, yeah, I understand. No, I don't understand. Like, I really don't. And so if I catch myself saying it, I'm like, wait a minute.
And that's okay if you don't want to say, no, I don't, but you can just, why do you explain it to me a little bit?
But I did kind of like that filler. Oh, I understand. And then I feel like, really? So, like you said, tell me how it feels, or what did the experience is like, or...
Well, in a lot of ways, they'll say, you don't know. You don't know. Tell me how you feel. Tell me how you feel.
Well, the guy that did it, basically what he was saying to us was like, you have to know where you're at.
I was able to make a lot of they're upset, like, just because
Knowing where we're at.
something do something, whether that's true or not, it doesn't matter.
We're more likely to not. That we're more likely to have a hard time to identify ourselves.
So we're thinking of one.
They care and they want to help them.
Maybe just another minute, guys. I'm sorry. Was your quote okay when I?
Yeah, no, it's fine. I have kids. It's been ripped off the wall many times.
No, I was just asking if anyone else. You're okay.
This car, man.
This is what you said.
It's the word of the week.
All right, guys. So finish up, and we'll come together as a big group. All right. Which group had Parker Palmer? All right. So I'm going to go ahead and read the 3 different quotes, and I just want to hear what each group their thoughts were on it.
Oh,
And see. All right. So Parker Palmer's his quote. Can you guys listen up? Sorry. His quote was, so the rest of the room knows what it was. One of the hardest things we must sometimes do is be present to another person's pain without trying to fix it. To simply stand respectfully at the edge of his or her mystery and misery. Standing there, we feel useless and powerless, which is exactly how a depressed person feels. And our unconscious need as jobs comforters is to reassure ourselves that we are not like the sad soul before us. In an effort to avoid those feelings, I give advice which sets me, not you, free. If you take my advice, you may get well, and if you don't get well, I did the best I could. If you fail to take my advice, there is nothing I can do about it. Either way, I get relief from distancing myself from you guilt-free. I always thought this was an extremely powerful quote. What did your group think?
In the beginning,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I can relate. And then I got down to the end and I'm like, excuse me, damn, like
Right?
that's messed up. You know, it just was like, I don't know, like the end was just really powerful. It was just like, wow, does someone really feel like that?
So what parts did you guys think were really messed up from that quote?
Well, the part where he just feel like it's like he's trying to put in more effort into trying to feel like he's trying to either fix it, realizing like, it's your pain, but then to sit back and say, well, I'm giving advice, I'm giving you some suggestions, but if you decide not to take it, then I did the best I can, and I feel guilt-free. Like that's not motivational interview, and obviously, and it's not any kind of empathy.
No empathy.
So he's
Yeah, it was almost more so he could walk away or she could walk away with a clear conscience. Like, I did what I could. See you. Good luck. Anybody else from that group or any other group from hearing the quote have comment on that one? Okay, good. Again, all 3 quotes relate to compassion in a different way, or lack of compassion in Parker Palmer's case. Who had Henry's quote? Okay. So that quote was, let us not underestimate how hard it is to listen and to be compassionate. Compassion is hard because it requires the inner disposition to go with others to the place where they are weak, vulnerable, lonely, and broken. But this is not our spontaneous response to suffering. What we desire most is to do away with suffering by fleeing from it or finding a quick cure for it. As busy, active, relevant people, we want to make a real contribution. This means first and foremost doing something to show that our presence makes a difference. And so we ignore our greatest gift, which is our ability to be there, to listen, and to enter into solidarity with those who suffer. What did you guys think about that?
I think that part of it for me was like what it says is basically you want to tell them what to do because we know we're the experts, right? And we this is just what I got from it. We know what they should do. But the other part of it too is to look at it and say, like, when someone tells you something that you don't want to listen to, or you don't like I think you gave the example of kids, or we were talking about the DSS kind of stuff, or DCF kind of stuff, that kind of bothers a lot of us. Oh, I shouldn't say that. Would bother me.
It's a fair statement.
But you don't want to put that on the person, so you really have to be aware of what's going on with you. So like this part about you just want to run, basically, or not help at all, instead of we're learning just to be there for them and listen to what they have to say and have that empathy to, okay, well, it's not our situation, and maybe we don't know what's best for them because they may not be able to do what we think they should do. So meeting them where they're at, that's what I got out of it.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. Meet them where it is important. Anybody else from that group?
Well, reflective listening is a big quality in motivational interviewing as well.
Yeah, huge.
And using the open-ended skills.
One thing that I always picked up on from that quote too is how Henry speaks about having busy, active lives in general. I think especially in today's society, we're go, 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 that we don't necessarily take the time and stop and even smile at somebody when we bump into them on the street. And I think that quote speaks a lot to that as well. So just kind of bring that into your time with the clients, or again, just your life in general. And then last but not least, Ken Crable, this group here. The term compassion, calm meaning with and passion meaning suffering, can literally be interpreted as with suffering or coming alongside others in their suffering. When we are willing to be present to and with people in their suffering, addiction, trauma, woundedness, mental illness, poverty, hard decisions, we provide a tremendous gift to them. Call it acceptance, call it love. Sometimes it's pretty much all someone needs, as it frees and empowers them to move in a new direction. Perhaps you, like me, have been on the receiving end of such compassion at various times in your life and know what a difference it makes. What were your thoughts?
So one thing that we talked about was just the ability you don't necessarily have to have been through what someone's going through to offer them empathy. And just sometimes just sitting there and being like, wow, that really sucks, is enough for that person to just have someone to listen to them, to make a connection with that person and to make a difference.
Anyone else? From the group as a whole?
Just basically offering that support.
Yep, good.
You don't have to walk the same shoes to be able to be a support system and a shoulder to lean on, somebody to talk to, and it makes a difference.
An interesting little bit between these three quotes on compassion, I think Ken Crable, this last group's, was the most empathetic. And one of the reasons that I think, I could be totally wrong, where he comes from a different point of being empathetic and having that compassion, is he was extremely depressed to the point of suicidal, in bed for weeks at a time, and people would come over and pretty much say, just stop it, snap out of it, you have a beautiful family, you have a wonderful job, come on, let's go outside. And the person who helped him through it the most was one of his friends who just came and sat by his bed every day. Didn't say a word, didn't expect him to get dressed, didn't expect him to shower, just was with him, just was present. That person might not have, or maybe they did, experience that level of depression, but they were able to give that empathy, and just like that little cute bear did, just didn't silver line things, and just said, I'm here with you. So he comes from a different place, I think, than the other two quotes. Good. All right. The last part of PACE, spirit, is evocation. The helper does not operate from the deficit model. that it is implicit in much of the health and human services field, and the helper works to draw out the person's own wisdom, experience, and expertise in their own change. So what the deficit model is, it's the idea that the person's lacking something, that we need to help fill that void for them, that something's missing and we kind of like need to install it. And that doesn't work in motivational interviewing because that again would imply that we know what's best for the client and we don't. So to the client, we want to, if not directly tell them, you have what you need and my job is just to help you find it. Again, you have the ability to climb Mount Everest, you just need my help getting there. Evocation can be facilitated by saying things like, if you decide to change this, how do you think you would go about it? You've really put a lot of thought into this. When the person expresses a reason for change, again, the darn cat, desirability, reason. Tell me more about that, or by using strategies and reflective change talk, which we'll get a little into. Alright. So this is more of the skills, and one of the women in the back group, I think, touched a little bit on some of the skills we're going to learn. I'm going to go from the baseline that nobody knows anything, so I apologize if this is redundant information for you. Somebody said redundant earlier, now that word's stuck in my head.
That's the word of the weekend.
Yeah. Open questions, affirmations, reflective listening, summaries, informing, and advising. So we'll touch a little bit on each one of those. So open questioning. Any given question is either open or closed. Closed questions ask the person for specific information and would be expected to elicit a short answer. So yes or no questions. Information questions. How old are you? What do you do for work? Things like that. Sometimes those questions, not sometimes, those questions are necessary, but they don't want to consume the whole conversation. Open questions leave a broad latitude for response, inviting the person to elaborate. And in motivational interviewing, about 70% of the helper's questions should be open. When we do some practicing with this later on, just kind of keep that in mind. I'm going to digress for a quick second and just let you guys know, if you do find yourself interested in motivational interviewing and want to take it a step further and become a trained MI, motivational interviewing trainer, it's hours of training sessions, but what it ends with is you would do a 20-minute video and it gets sent up to a coding center in Maine. And some of the things they look for is how many open questions you do compared to closed questions, things like that. So if this does interest you, or you want to take it a little further after this, I can give you more information on that. But it's just something to keep in mind. Great open questions in this model could include, what ideas have you had about how you might change this? What is the downside to this for you? Again, in response to change talk, when you hear them wanting to overcome that ambivalence, why? Something as simple as that. Tell me more about that. Yes, that's a question, because it's, well, technically, grammatically, it's not a question, but it will elicit more of a response. What are some reasons you'd want to change? And if you did change this, how might your life be different in 5 years? You can even take it down a step. 5 years might seem far off for a lot of our people we work with. How's your life going to be different in a month, in a week? Affirmations. In motivational interviewing, the helper makes specific statements noticing the strengths, values, good intentions, abilities, and efforts of the person. To be able to make these statements, the helper maintains a constant lookout for material to use to affirm the person. Affirmations can be general, they can be specific. So I like the way you said that. So you could say, I like the way you said that. Or standing up to her took a lot of courage. You really take pride in what you do. It hasn't been easy getting here. I appreciate the effort you're making. Those are all affirming the steps they've taken. Okay. Let's skip that one. Reflective listening. This is a fundamental skill in MI, in motivational interviewing, and somebody had spoken to that a little bit. It helps to deepen an understanding. Okay, so the most frequent thing the helper does in motivational interviewing conversation is to reflect. Their guesses about the meaning of what the person has said. Sometimes those guesses are safe, the best ones are risky, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And reflection is the best tool to develop and strengthen the person's change talk. So reflecting is good because it also allows the clients to hear their own thoughts and feelings, but maybe word it a little bit differently, and it might help click that light bulb a little bit. It also keeps the person talking, exploring, and just thinking about what they were saying. So there's two types of reflection. You have simple reflection, stays close to the content, create less movement towards change, and it does keep the conversation moving. Again, that can be something simple like a head nod, just to let the person know that you're there, you're listening. And then you have more complex reflections. So it adds meaning or emphasis to the content, and it creates more movement towards change. So obviously, reflection is great in general, but you want to try the more complex reflection because it's going to help you move along a little bit more. Let's see. All right, so here's some examples. Continuing the paragraph, adding on to what the person has just said, continuing the story from their perspective. So if the client says something like, exercise will help me. So you feel exercise will give you more energy, help you improve your sleep, it'll increase your self-esteem. So you just added on to what they said. Identifying feelings, using an emotion word to express the person's feelings. Overshooting, so overstating the intensity of the person's emotion. So what if you had a client who said, sometimes I really hate my husband. What would an overshoot be, do you think, for a reflective statement?
So you really hate your husband?
So that would be a simple reflection. Yep. So if you want to overshoot, you want to go so far that either they're going to say, yes, that's it, or no, whoa, you're way off. So what might something be? Yeah.
You feel like killing your husband?
Yeah, like that's an overshoot. You could say you feel like killing your husband. Oh, so you want to get a divorce. Yeah, good, both of you. So bless you. Undershooting is just the opposite. Understanding the intensity of the person's emotions, it helps with that. And double-sided reflecting is reflecting both sides of the person's ambivalence. So, you really get joy from smoking cigarettes, but on the other hand, you want to quit smoking because you know it's better for your health. So that's playing both sides. All right, so guidelines for reflective listening. Again, this is a major area graded if you guys want to do the coding for MI videos. Briefer is generally better. The goal to shoot for is to have twice as many reflections as questions. And to have at least half of all reflections be complex. So again, just kind of have that back in your mind. I know it's a lot of ratios. You want to have more open-ended questions than closed, more complex than simple reflections, and more reflections than questions. A helpful pattern for when we're practicing is question, reflection, reflection, question, reflection, reflection, etc., with an affirmation and summary here or there. I don't know that we talked yet about summaries. It's different from affirmations. A summary just kind of is just that. You just kind of, you can either rephrase or even say back verbatim what the person just said to you. It's not only good for the client, but it's good for you to make sure you're actually understanding and hearing what they're saying. Oh, here we go. Summaries. These are pretty much just longer reflections. They are used for several purposes and calculates what has been said so far, links current content to previous content, transition from one phase of the conversation to another, and the open question, what else is a good one to use after a summary? Let's see how we're doing on time. I'll give you a break in just a little bit. We're doing good. Okay. Informing and advising. Before advice or information is offered, the helper should try to evoke it from the person. So again, hoping that the client will kind of come to these things on their own. If they don't, a little nudge is perfectly okay. In motivational interviewing, advice or information is only offered at a person's request or with the person's permission. So what that means, again, we have our own preconceived ideas about things, but let's say, for example, a client comes in who is suffering with alcoholism. You know a great AA group that another client you have goes to. we don't just want to come out and say, hey, by the way, on Monday night, there's an AA group. You would say something like, is it okay if I share with you some information I have on an AA group? If they say no, you don't take it any further. They said no. Or if somebody smokes cigarettes, we would never say, when they give you all the list of reasons that they enjoy smoking, which are very valid, we would never say, but you know you could get lung cancer. You don't just offer your advice. You might want to say, well, how would you guys tell me, how might you, if you're not sure that they know the risk of smoking to your health, how might you phrase asking, is it okay if I give you this information? What do you guys think?
Do you mind if I bring some information, like at our next session?
Yeah.
About the effects of smoking?
You can do that. I have some pamphlets on the effects of smoking. Is it okay if I bring them to you? Exactly, good.
Maybe say something like, I hear what you're saying, I hear that you're saying you don't want to quit at this time, but would it be okay if I bring in some information just for you to look at over, at your own leisure?
Yep, perfect. And if they say no, you don't bring it. Okay. All right. So we talked back in the beginning about change talk. And again, that's just the words that you'll hear that tell you that they're ready to start making that change. So you want to ask provocative questions, use the running head start, which we'll talk about, ask for elaboration, so a little bit more, I'm sorry, mind your a little bit more detail. Okay.
My back hurts, so I'm trying to be as straight as possible.
Ask for examples, look back, look forward, query extremes, use importance, confidence rulers, we're going to go over this quickly, and explore goals and values, and then come alongside, we'll talk about that as well. So the first thing is running head start. Something, 1 second. Oh, there we go. All right, so one way to elicit change talk is to ask questions for which the answer is actually change talk. So you're kind of, I don't know if this is the right way to word it, but cornering them into starting with change talk. And they'll back out of that corner if they're not ready, but they might be. How would you like for things to change? So here's the darn cat, or just the darn cart, desire. If you decided to quit, how could you do it? Ability. What is the downside of the way things are? Reason. How urgent does this feel for you? The need. What are you looking for from this program? Desire. Which of these options seems most possible? Ability. Why would you want to get more exercise? Reason. And then what do you think has to change? The need. So we use what's called the running head start, and it's used in situations where there have been a preponderance of sustained talk. So they're kind of stuck. They're not moving forward, but they're not going back either. The helper joins with the person by asking about the benefits of status quo, so drawing out that sustained talk, then pivots and asks about the drawbacks of the status quo, so drawing the change talk. So switching from drawing sustained talk, so it's staying level, to making a step forward. Okay, so you'd want to ask for elaborations or examples. You're going to use this when change talk is actually present. So when you start to hear that they're ready to go ahead and take some steps. The helper simply asks the person to say more about change talk, or just ask for examples to illustrate it. I need to do something about this. Why? Or I know there are medical benefits to quitting smoking. What benefits have you heard about? One more slide, and then I'll let you guys have a break because it's warm in here. So looking back and looking forward. So looking back, tell me, okay, so this is one I like to use. Tell me what things were like before this was a problem, and then looking forward. If you made change on this, how do you think your life would be different in 5 years? Again, you could also do something much simpler, like a month. So what was life like before you started using drugs? What would life be like after you stop using drugs? And it gets them really kind of thinking. Okay. So I'll give you guys a little bit of a break. Can you guys be back like at, I have 1:41, so let's say like 1:51, 1:52-ish. Okay. Thank you.
driving out, and my sister-in-law is coming too, and she's flying into New York for 2 weeks from Boston, and my husband just oh God! She's like, and she's not one for situations like that.
I don't know if I live in
No, so she, I was glad it was not in that car. Yeah, but unfortunately, it was their fault. It wasn't their fault. My sister, it wasn't the airline's fault. So they won't like it unless it's the airline's fault. They do.
My daughter was 1 pound over the 50 pound Mercedes, and they made my ex-husband buy a suitcase from here, like their Southwest suitcase.
You guys are fun.
I don't know.
Because if it was me, that's what
One thing in the trash.
I was like, you should have got rid of that hoodie, whatever that was the 1 pound. Just like, tied it around your waist, or like, put it in your pockets.
I just told my mom.
every shirt.
It was just a me and my husband just got through the free TSA check, like where you could, when there's that new line where you don't have to like take off your shoes or take off anything. So we just got some reading to see how that works and find out. See if they're like, Alex not.
I have, like, it must be because you're just less stress. I think it's stressful to live in, even if you're not doing anything.
Well, to be honest, I'm a very organized person, but going through sick time makes you feel, you never feel more disorganized than when you go through sick time because
everybody's behind you, there's 4 of them over there.
You're trying to grab your shoes and your phone. It is awful.
Yes, if you can even get.
Well, you don't have to take off your shoes, you don't have to pull out your laptops, like.
So that's not the same for it?
That's it, so it's a separate line. The only bad thing is that more people want to do it. So the lines are getting longer and longer for that because sometimes the line is longer than the security, like the regular security.
Oh, so you're not able just to go through, you still have to do some steps of the process.
Well, you still have to go through like the detectors and stuff, but you don't have to take off your shoes, you don't have to like watches, jewelry, and you have that. You do, so it's $85 for 5 years.
Per person? Per family, per person.
Okay. So it's really not bad to save, for 5 years.
Probably a lot of
people is gonna think the same.
It's like the fast pass and stuff at the amusement parks and stuff.
Yeah, and that's what the article was saying. There was an article written about it. That's what they were saying is that the line's actually getting longer and longer because more people are using it. So sometimes it's not even worth.
So you're not saving any
Time,
or stress, you're still waiting in the line.
It depends, so we'll see how it works.
Yeah, I guess in terms of regular flying or regular traveling,
Yeah. See, I am like, we usually go down to Florida throughout the winter time because my mom and dad have a place down there, so we get to take the kids down there for, long weekends here and there. And then, like,
I'm sorry, I don't. Did you do the beginning of my training with me with Bob Joe like 2 years ago?
Probably. I was thinking, like,
I was looking at you, yeah.
Like, I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, you look very
Yeah, you have to go through it again, huh? Because of the change of the contract.
Yeah. Should be good. Simply, I'm gonna
You know what I'm talking about? That's what sometimes you don't know it.
You don't.
Especially if you're old. That's a since that's on the street, that's coming soon and that's what it looks like. I don't know what color we got it. We got the Montana suede. Yeah, Montana suede. That's pretty. And that's
I think that I think I'm clean.
you know what? Thank you.
I remember even in my old house, which I know was like eighth grade when upstairs. And that was a static. I gotta go through the pretty small now.
If you have video, she's automatically start playing.
You know, karate is right.
Nobody's there.
And even his family, what the hell out of it. What's the problem? Got your list. My entire life. All
And it hurt down my knee.
Bed to have layers.
I did.
It's a horror show, I kid you not. And then she has people over. Like yesterday. Yeah, and I didn't think
She was on.
I don't take my son. I couldn't do
I will work too. I've never lived there. I am going by word of mouth as well. I will accept that.
Yeah, because there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Sit here. Yeah.
And you're just constantly walking.
right, like I felt fine, like once I got home, because like I just sat. And it
Tomorrow will be more hands-on. Yeah. A different just environment in general. We're almost there.
like we said, tomorrow's a different environment. So it might like
Stimulate our
Plus it's hands-on and we'll be doing it.
I can already see myself being like 3 steps behind in that computer tomorrow.
I haven't even done the touch. I won't even mess with the touch screen part of it yet.
think EMS with the is it like the sensitivity or is it just where it's placed?
I think it's like where it's placed is my
What is plate, it's not really in the center.
Yeah, because like my first laptop doesn't have the keypad on the side, so it's smaller. So I'm like, you get what I'm saying? So I don't really want to be in the keypad on the side.
I think an old fashioned
Once you start playing around with it a little
All right, guys, we're gonna come back together. I know we're still missing a few, and we're ahead of schedule. So unless anybody really wants to stay till the 4, I can try to stretch it out, but I don't. That's my attempt to be like, no, thank you. All right. So let's see. So just to pick up on the slide where we left off. Query extremes. If this situation continues the way it's been going, what do you think is the worst thing that can happen? So I keep using somebody who's using drugs. If I continue to use drugs, my kids are going to get taken away. I could overdose. I could die. Or if you were successful in changing this, what do you think would be the best case scenario? I get my kids back. I can hold a job. My husband won't leave me. So you help them think of those extremes that they might not be thinking of on their own. All right, let's skip that. Importance confidence rulers. We use this a lot in MI. If you remember back to your bachelor's or master's level days, it's kind of like a Likert scale. So we use it to assess readiness to change, and it has 2 components. The first being the importance ruler. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it for you to start exercising? They're going to give you a number. If they give you, let's say, a 5. So you're going to use a sub-question, x plus 2 minus 2. So if they give you a 5, well, okay, why isn't it a 3? And they're going to say, they might say something like, well, I went to my doctor's and he said that it was very important for me to start exercising. So that's what puts it at a 5 and not a 3. Okay, well, why is it not a 7 that you're ready to make this change? I'm going to have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to start working out. I just don't want to do that. So they'll give you reasons and you can go with those.
Yeah, I usually say something like, okay, so you're at a 6. What would it look like for you to get to a, what would have to happen for you to get to a 7?
Yep. So after you kind of do the plus and minus 2 for their reasons, you could say, okay, exactly what you said. What would it take to get to that 7? Okay, well, I have to set my alarm and I'm just maybe go to bed earlier, and they'll give you all the reasons, and then you can take it and start exploring that. And that can hopefully start that change talk we keep referring to. Confidence ruler is very similar. On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you could start exercising? Again, they're going to give you a number. You plus and minus it. Always do both. So you can hear their reasons for change and their reasons against change. Okay? Does anybody have questions on the rulers? Okay. All right. I'm going to hold this for 1 second. I just want to jump back for a second just to what we talked about earlier with the spirit and how important it is, and just to kind of give you guys a better idea of what it encompasses and what it means to have that spirit. I want you to take a second and think of a role model in your life, a teacher, a supervisor, a family member, and just what aspects of them made them your role model, made you look up to them. And I'll write it on this board, hopefully it doesn't go through, and we'll talk about it. So just kind of shout it out and I'll write it down. What was it? Oh, qualities in your role model that you have.
Confident.
Confident? Okay. That'd be really bad.
Compassionate?
And I'm sorry if you guys can't really see it. Compassionate.
Informative.
Straight. I'm terrified that I'm going to write on this board. Okay.
Compassionate. Oh, you already have
Yeah,
that.
have that one.
Strength.
Strength. Okay.
Non-judgmental. Go-getter.
A go-getter?
Integrity.
Your role model's a go-getter?
Open-minded.
Open-minded. Okay.
Knows when to stay silent.
Knows when to stay silent.
Spiritual.
Good listener.
All right, hold on 1 second.
Oh.
Okay. And strictly because I am at the end and I'm still afraid that I'm going to go off the board. Go ahead and just shout out any that you still had. Any others?
Non-judgmental.
Non-judgmental, good one.
Leader.
Leader.
Supportive.
Supportive.
Caring.
Good, caring. Good. And I'm sure with more time, did I hear another one?
It's loving.
Loving, good. We could, good.
I love that.
We could have a huge list. So these are just qualities that kind of encompass the spirit. So as you're practicing it, whether it's with your client at work, in your everyday life, just keep these things in mind. And again, that's just qualities that make up what we call the spirit. Okay. So an old Rogerian approach that's recently being used more in motivational interviewing is helping the person to explore and articulate their goals and values. It provides vantage points from which to look at the current situation, and we use what's called card sorting. And we're going to do a little bit of that today. What that is there's 50 values, and I will pass them out to you guys. So typically a card sort looks like this. There's all these 50 values, you would cut them up, and the person can get comfy on the floor, and they're going to sort these cards. What I did for simplicity, since we certainly don't have room for all you guys to go on the floor, is put it like this. So I'm going to pass these around and I'll explain to you what we're going to do with them. The purpose of this exercise, and you would do it with your client, the purpose of this exercise is if they're kind of just ambivalent in general, if they're stuck in any way, especially if they're in a depression, this helps them find feelings and value and importance in their life that they might not have even known they had. If you ever take a moment to ask somebody who's suffering from depression, give me 3 positive qualities, they can't. They're depressed. They're not going to be able to do that. So this helps with that. So we use card sorting a lot with MI. So just take one, look over, there's 50. And then the last 2, it says other, because there might be one on here that you have that's a quality that's important to you that isn't on here. And if there's more, just pass them on to the next table because I don't think I divided it up. You're welcome. And you guys are going to be short, but hopefully some will make its way back to you. The next sheet that I'm passing around is the actual worksheet. So if I can just have your attention for a second, I'll explain this to you. So when you're doing a card sort with a client, it's split into 5. So you have least important, not very important, neutral, somewhat important, and most important. You're going to sort those words into these groups. You don't have to do all 50. Your client would. I'm not going to make you guys do all 50. In the most important column, whatever's most important for you, I just ask that you don't do more than 10. Okay? Not everything can be most important. So just do that first part first where you're sorting into these 5 columns, and then we'll do this bottom part afterwards, okay? If you find this card sorting to be interesting or of value to you, motivational interviewing, everything, they want to give you all the resources. So you just go to motivationalinterviewing.org and you can get the card sorting, you can get any resources on there for free. They just want to make their information useful for you guys. Okay? Okay, you guys need an extra? Do you guys need an extra?
2 extras.
Okay, here's another extra. Okay. Again, the same with these. If a table comes up short, if another one has extras.
Oh, we don't have that.
Do you need one more?
Oh, you do? That's what that, yeah.
So I'll give you guys about maybe 5 or so minutes to look through it. Remember, not more than 10 in that most important column. Okay, does anybody need an extra?
Wait, are we doing this?
You guys good?
In our own personal values and stuff. Is that what it is? I got a lot of stuff.
Because you have personal values.
You want us to do all of the boxes up, right?
Just do all of them, so that way you know, not all 50, but put something in at least every box.
Like something in each
Yep.
box, okay, yeah. So we'll do something in each box. Yeah. And most important, not more than 10 are.
She said you could put up another word. It's not on this. No, it's like such a big,
Well, it's this big.
but I'm even loyal and more.
Loyalty and faithfulness
Yeah.
is different.
And that's such a cancer thing.
That's
My
what you're
sign,
saying, she got no loyalty.
Yes.
Your, yep, so, dig deep.
Staff summer social.
Did that help?
When? You got an email for that?
August 2nd. From 11 to 1.
Party.
It's a summer social, it sure is.
Games, something, lunch. Cool.
It's fun. Did you have fun doing that?
Oh, yeah.
That was kind of hesitant.
Yeah, that was like,
Yeah.
Yes, these are, what?
That's okay.
Why?
Self-care.
The most important thing on this list.
Somewhat
I worked for an engineering firm that used to do employee days once a month, whether it's like all the upper management for us outside or. We used to go on the Odyssey for like dinner cruises.
Now just because I don't.
Oh yeah, Oswald was very much.
But I like that because, you know, the business. Do you guys have any extra functions?
Yeah.
For all of us to go to any more reasons?
Well, we did that on work time.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, we got transported in buses from our engineering firm to
But a lot of times, it'll be outside.
after hours.
my friend works at a law firm and they just had theirs on the outing and it was Friday night.
Overnight?
After work. They left work at 3, so they left 2 hours after work. And she didn't know. I'm just like,
That's cool.
Where we find them on our value.
right, it's just.
Because I think this is a good exercise.
Yeah, we did the Odyssey.
That's true. When it's stop work.
We used that.
I know I do that. So you can have the cars, what is with the dogs, they can sit and. She's looking at it. I think it's just to get an idea of how it feels to fill it out and identifying them in yourself.
Go in the back.
Just do about 2 more minutes.
Just keep on.
You're saying here, I'm like, no.
No.
Just to be.
Just kind of, yeah. That's what I would do.
Remember the document. That's true.
I don't think this is cold, but this is nice.
I think it's.
The first thing was really cold.
Oh.
We're all cold. That's comfortable.
I like that too, actually.
That's why I'm saying I would do it. The first day, everybody was freezing.
Tony
The first day.
Rogal works there.
After that, they shut
It's
down.
really humid.
just scheduling it because that's.
Okay,
open
so
enrollment.
now, if you guys are done with that part, what you're gonna do is take what you had in your most important column and now list those down below, 1 through 10. 1 being what is the utmost important to you through 10. You might not have 10, however many you listed in that. So maybe 1 through 5, 1 through 3, whatever, 1 through 10. So now you're gonna like subsort them.
She didn't Smarties. She did right on hers and then the accounting.
She said you can get that on the
Yeah,
website.
but the way it's set up like this, the way it's in Word, I guess you could just go into the Word document.
Did you guys want to see what the cards actually look like? Is that what you're?
No.
Oh.
I actually like the list.
When they're sitting on the floor, if they have the cards, they, it takes a lot longer because they move them all around and they rethink. All right. Does anybody want to share what it was like to sort your cards, or your thoughts on what it might be like for a client?
Well, you had to really put some thought into how you feel about something.
Yep. You had to kind of prioritize, especially because you only had 10. Did anybody want to put more than 10 in most important?
Yep.
Yeah. Everything's important. Okay. Anyone else?
No, I think that's what was hardest is that you go down the list and you're like, well, that's important to me, but that's also important to me, and so on and so forth. So as Mike just said, to prioritize and really consider what are your core values.
Very good. Yep. Thank you. All right. Again, if you guys want the card sort, you can go to motivationalinterviewing.org and it's there. Or just Google it. Other places have it too. All right. So one thing we just didn't talk about was coming alongside. Just what that means, it's just a particular kind of complex reflection. It is helpful in situations where there's a lot of sustained talk, but little change talk. So in the Brene Brown video, we watched empathy versus sympathy. She talked about that, actually just being with somebody, walking with them, being alongside them. It's the same idea. It involves amplifying the sustained talk, so really kind of bringing it out to the person. They might not recognize they're kind of stuck. So it just brings it to their attention in the hope that inducing the person to respond with change talk. So again, getting them to start making the move forward. All right, so we're gonna do some practicing with MI, so you guys can get a little bit of a feel for it. So how we're gonna work with it is you have your speaker. So I'll give a little brief overview and then we'll go ahead and start it. The speaker, what I want, everybody's gonna have a turn to be a speaker. So you're gonna think of something to talk about that you're comfortable sharing. You have some ambivalence about, again, it could be starting an exercise program, eating better, getting more sleep. It doesn't have to be deep. You can make a decision on. It has some complexity to it. Role playing is permissible but not preferred. So if you are thinking of a client, if a client comes to mind and you are a thespian and you want to try role playing, go for it. But it's more practical and more beneficial to you if you think of something for yourself. Somebody's going to be the helper, and their role is to use the spirit, which we've talked a lot about, and skills of motivational interviewing, open questions, reflecting, affirmations, the confidence ruler, things like that. You're going to try to use twice as many reflections, we talked about that, as questions. Evoke perspective and reasons for change from the person. Hold back from trying to use your writing reflex. Relax, take your time with responses and only say what you want to say. I can't tell you when I started practicing MI how many times I was like, can I start over? Or I had a lot of that. Oh, and use do-overs if you want. So I'm going to put you guys into 3 groups. Don't move yet. One person's going to be the helper. One person's going to be the speaker. The third person on a piece of scrap paper or whatever will be the coder. And what that means is you're just going to make tallies. You can make a little chart box. Questions and reflections. And each time you hear the helper ask a question, just put a tally. Each time they do a reflection, put a tally. Then when it's over, the person will have some feedback. Okay, wow, I asked 90% questions and only used 1 reflection. You don't have to worry too much about open and closed, though keep them in mind, and complex and simple reflections, just keep them in mind. I underlined the ones you want to try to do more, obviously opened and complex reflections. Use summaries and affirmations. So does anybody have questions on how that will work? Everybody will get a turn, so there's going to be 3 rounds. After each round, we'll just kind of talk a little bit on what it was like to be a coder, a helper, a speaker, and then after that, you guys will be done. Okay, so does anybody have questions? All right, so what I'd like you guys to do is just take a quick minute, think about something you'd want to talk about, and put yourself into groups of 3. Okay, if you can take up the whole room, you don't have to stay where you are. Okay, so, get it done. I'll let you know when we're going to start. So right now, just find groups of 3. I think we might have 1 extra, so there'll be a group of 4. And if that happens, 1 person just won't get to do one of the roles. You guys good? Oh wow, it worked out. It should stay longer. Alright, so everybody formed a group of some sort? Okay. Each round is 6 minutes.
So Derek becomes
I'll tell you guys when to start, and I'm going to kind of circulate throughout the room, so if you need help, just ask. And maybe you can do. She's gonna. Why don't you tell us the same thing? She and I will do the thing first. We all got to help. All right, everybody has their groups. Does everybody know what they're doing for the first round? So you're going to All right, 6 minutes is going to start now.
So you're the speaker. Talk about So what's come up in your life that makes you want to quit?
Finding that you're so busy that you don't
Yeah.
Is there any way that you can maybe make a schedule for work it into? So
What motivate you, or what do you think could change in your life that would help to motivate you?
yeah, sure, because I'm really bad at this and I've learned it a million times. No, what I did though is prior to that I wasn't doing it.
I did but I think that I didn't do it affirmation, but I didn't do because I didn't what would it look like for your daughter, or you want to quit smoking for your daughter. Is it because you don't want her to smoke?
So now she's getting a little bit older, so she is starting to recognize that that's mommy stuff. So how does that make you feel when she takes a cigarette?
I don't want to make you feel bad about yourself in real life now. This is
No, this is good because I didn't smoke.
Yeah, right.
So if you were to quit smoking, what would like what would you change? But that was a long time ago without smoking.
I know, so I know I can tell you yeah. So now it's like, it's hard to make and that's the other thing. I do want to smoke, you know, what is stuff I want to smoke. Then I enjoy smoking. That's my thing. Like if I don't smoke, my husband is crazy. I can't say that. And even on the coping skills in that work, especially with driving.
So quitting smoking, you think will bring more stress to your life?
It's initial, but then I know like in the long run, it's getting to that point. Because when I quit one day, I was good for like 3 days, and I was supposed to be caught, and I started asking
Yeah, like that's awful. That must have been very scary. So what are some other things you could replace the smoking with? Eating healthy.
I'm good at telling other people now.
I think we are probably all. I think that's probably one of us. Like if I sat down with myself, I could be like, I could do this, this, and this, but I sit in my own head every night and then I'm like,
No, the speaker is I'll be the no
About 1 minute left.
Oh, we still have, we haven't switched it.
yeah, we have to, because we said I am always instead of just
All right, guys.
I break out the rash.
So, I walked around and I heard some really good reflections, some good questioning. Alright guys, you guys are obviously in really good sessions.
Sorry.
You guys are making progress, yeah. Can I hear from anybody who was a speaker? What was that like for you? Any speakers? Yeah.
I talked about wanting to quit the food.
Okay.
Just the steps that I've taken and my reservations. Yeah, basically that's what I said with. We wanted to quit smoking.
Okay.
And then she asked me like.
Your helper?
Yeah, my helper
Okay.
asked me like what choices, what kind of ways would I try, and I talked about trying Chantix years ago, but made me like, rah. So I got off of that, but then I got the patch and it's been in my drawer for a month and a half. So, and then she talked about what would your life look like
In a year.
in a year from now.
Good. What are the
with-
skills we learned?
when you're not smoking, and it does give you a sense of like accomplishment, because I'm like, I'll have way more money. My son gave me a good idea. He said get a photo album and put like a destination picture, and every slot put the $10 for the pack of cigarettes. So when you're
like
done,
that.
there's your destination. It's my 11-year-old son, so he's also a motivation for me to quit smoking. So
She
thinking of
definitely
all
made
that,
it easy for me as the helper because she came in driven with a plan. So it was kind of just, you know, yeah, the patch has been in the job for a month and a half and y'all so motivated.
But she had the steps. She was taking the steps already.
Right, right. She was taking the steps. So I feel like just asking the right questions and making her think more of the big picture. So now
That
she's
made
ready to
it-
go home and put the patch on.
like I could see that when I'm thinking, wow, a year from now, and so much more money and healthier, and it's, yeah, she definitely asked the right questions.
Awesome.
It's $3,650.
Anybody who, yep, were you a speaker, coder, or helper?
I was a speaker.
Okay.
$10 a week.
$10 a day.
Mine's $20.
Hold on, guys. Alright, speaker?
I was a speaker and I spoke about the wanting to lose weight and being healthier. And it seemed as though just giving me solutions kind of was overwhelming, you know, telling me, oh, you can do this, you can do this. It was overwhelming and it almost made me feel like, okay, this losing weight thing is never gonna happen. But a couple of them, and even when you came over, the questions I would ask kind of made me reflect back. And when it made me reflect on why I wanted to lose weight and the things that I could do to lose weight, it made it almost like, okay, wait, now I can do this. It's not so overwhelming. I can take this little baby step, and in the end, it'll make a big change, but this little baby step is okay for me to take instead of taking this big, gigantic step I know I'm not ready for and just setting myself up for failure.
And be careful when we offer, well, we don't want to offer solutions because that's telling people that we know what's right, we want to fix it. So take that step back. Trust me, I've been in the helper seat where I'm like jumping in my seat. I have these great ideas running through my head, and you need to take a step back, okay? Good, thank you for that. Anybody else? Anybody speaker? Who were you, Christine?
I was the helper.
Okay.
Yeah. And Maria was my speaker client, and she did exercise. So we set it up great where I was asking her all questions about why she wants to exercise, and she gave me the reasons, and she has all the tools she needs, and she can go walking, and she has everything. So then when I asked her though, and I guess this is where she said that I asked her if she was motivated, she said no. And then I said why? Why I'm motivated, and she was I'm tired. And I said, why are you tired? Because I do nothing all day, which is a reasonable answer. How far down the rabbit hole do you go before, because this could be never ending.
Right, so it sounds like you were asking a lot of questions. So Maria was kind of in a catch-22. Well, one of the reasons you don't want to exercise is because you're tired, but if you exercise, you might have more energy. So you get stuck. But at that point, you might want to stop with the questions regarding exercise and focus on the tiredness, because that's her main obstacle right now, it sounds like, for exercising, her reason not to do it, that's leaving her in that like stagnant spot. And just reroute it, look at how can we get more sleep? I work 12-hour days. Wow, that's really exhausting. I totally get why, sleep is hard to come by. And then you can just kind of go from there. Because what seems to, like what the client might say is her obstacle might have little sub-obstacles that need to be overcome first. Does that make sense? A little bit?
It
No?
makes sense, no, it makes complete sense.
Okay.
How far like at what point you just keep going until there's no solution? What if there is no solution? That's what I'm
Yeah,
asking.
if
Is that okay?
so where you have things like CBT, DBT, those are all skills those are all types of therapy we use. Motivational interviewing is a skill that's used within that. So you're only going to use motivational interviewing if the person has any showing of desired change. If they are not changing, like I know we can think of a couple clients that we have, I work with them, it's not going to work. Motivational interviewing is only going to work if there's a hint of ambivalence. There doesn't even need to be a 50-50. It can be 1% to 99%. If there's that 1% of ambivalence, you can take it and go with it. But if there's 0, don't use MI. It's not going to work. You're just, like you said, you're just going to keep going in circles. You would want to try something else. Okay? Anybody else? Speaker, helper, coders? Can I hear from a coder what it was like just kind of keeping, yeah.
It was hard. 'Cause
Yeah.
I will say though, our little group, it was perfect. There was 8 reflections and 4 questions. But some of her questions led into other questions, so I didn't know if I should rate them separately. But they related to each other.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I think it doesn't have to be black and white. It sounds like you guys hit that 70% for reflections pretty spot on. If it was 8 to 12, right?
Yeah.
I'd say good job. That's good. Whoever was the helper there, thumbs up. Anybody else? Okay. So now we're gonna flip. If you just pick one of the roles you weren't, and we have 2 more rounds, so hopefully everybody will get a chance, okay? So think about what you want to talk about, decide what role you are, and I'll give you guys 1 minute, and then we'll start the second round.
And then now, that's when I see you all going out.
All right, can I hear from anybody, speaker, coder, or helper about what this was like? Anybody want to share?
I will.
Yeah.
As a speaker, I definitely addressed something that I've been thinking about for a while. So just that kind of questioning made me think outside of the box. It challenged me to really come up with a plan. Do you know what I mean? And a realistic, logical. And some of her questions, I'm a visual learner, and she really got that out of me. So then, then it was well, in her reflections, it was different ideas of even playing off of what I'm saying. Oh, you're a visual learner, you can draw a chart. Mm-hmm. So it was extremely helpful. It just kind of brought me outside of my comfort zone, but it made me really dig deeper.
Helped you see things that maybe you weren't.
Might actually try it.
Anybody else? Speaker, helper, or coder?
I was a
Yeah.
I was the helper.
Okay.
And the problem was, the situation was that.
Can I pause you for a quick second? Can you just make sure it's okay with the speaker that you're gonna let?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure.
So the situation was that she wanted to lose weight, to become healthier. So we were going, just from that I was asking her questions. It was almost like going down this road. So I was asking her questions about why she wanted to do it. So she had her reasons. She had her, she was prepared to do it. She had the gym membership, she had the sneakers, she had the whole thing. And then when we got to in the middle of the road where there's a bump that prevented her from going further, we found out that she craved a lot of sweet things at, I guess, I don't know, certain times. And she couldn't control the cravings. So one of the questions was, is it a reaction to something? Is there something going on with her at the moment? And that was a comfort or a reaction to sweetness or the sugar or whatever was how she was dealing with it instead of going on. So that was the bump, and that's where we stopped because
Can I interrupt? So as the speaker, did you know that obstacle was there for you before? Were you aware that?
No.
Okay.
I had kind of like a little aha, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I reacting to? Because it's usually in the evening. I'm home with my son in the evenings. You guys, I'm redirecting a lot at that time. So it was kind of like an aha. I'm like, wow, I'm gonna really start to, when I'm craving something at that time, I'm gonna look outside of myself and see what's going on.
A little bit more aware.
There may be a little trigger there.
Good, very
Maybe
good.
self-soothing, but.
Yeah. Anyone else? Good. Anybody else?
Got one.
Yeah.
I was a coder.
A coder?
Coder. It was hard to kind of listen to her story, then also pay attention to her.
Yeah.
To see what the questions or her remarks.
Mm-hmm.
So she had pretty, open and ended question, also the question as well. But what we had conversations a while ago was, her body demeanor and gesture can that be used as a reflection? Because they're talking, but her body, her eye, and this is saying, reflecting on what she's saying.
Those would be very simple reflections,
because
but yeah.
there's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Huge, so I thought that was kind of, reflection, because she, addressing her wants and her needs by looking her in her eye and.
I'm finding myself do it to you right now, yep. Yes, you could definitely use that to just be a simple reflection.
Okay.
Yep, good. Anybody else? Yeah. Yeah.
Just in general, because Dolly's not here. She was the staff and I was the client.
Okay.
I guess I can say this. Anyways, I said, we were talking about work. That was my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking and I said, yeah, I want a job and I want a job and I want to go to school and I don't know what I want and I don't know what I want. And then finally I was like, I'll say Yale. And I said, I want to go to Yale. And she was like, okay. So then, the question was out of experience, what was to keep going, you can just keep going if the person is really willing to do anything and everything. It's the absolute opposite of somebody who isn't willing to do anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
At what point do you kind of just keep going? They asked me because of experience. I just said, okay, let me just supported it.
Right.
Supported that
And
person to do whatever they wanted. But.
Mm-hmm. So, in case some people didn't hear, so she was referring to a client that, as opposed to didn't want to do anything, wants to do everything, including going to Yale. Motivational interviewing is very person-centered. So we are not in a position to say, you're never going to be able to go to Yale. You want to be an astronaut? You can never be an astronaut. No, we take a step back because, again, we're not the expert and this is person-centered, client-focused. So what you might want to do in that situation is maybe a little bit reality-based. Okay, so you want to go to Yale. What are the steps that need to happen first? Maybe they need a GED. Maybe they aren't aware of how difficult Yale is, how competitive, and maybe they are perfectly capable of going to Yale. We don't know. So again, it's just meeting them where they're at. And I'm sorry, I think I lost sight of what your question actually was.
I just have a question based off that.
Did I answer your question at all?
You did answer my question because I said, because they were asking, what do you do? I know what I did in my own experience with that, but I didn't know, professionally, I guess. So the answer would be to be a little more reality-based and say, these are the steps to get you to Yale.
Right.
You complete these steps.
Yeah.
That's what'll get you there.
Yep, and we, again, would never want to say, Yale? Look at, what? Because, again, it's person-centered. So just kind of helping them. So it's kind of, whereas some people might be totally overcome by such a big goal, like I talked about a marathon before. This person is ready to run that marathon. You might need to pull them back a little bit and say, okay, let's run a 5K. You know what I mean? Let's get ready for that. And then marathon is in your sights, but let's be realistic about what you can do today. Yep. And did you have a question off of that? I'm sorry.
I did. Based on the situation, if we're dealing with people who have mental illness, I know for some of them, you do sometimes need to orient them to reality, because some of them, that is their reality. And I only say that because I worked with a client who thought he was going to try out for the Red Sox. And I mean, he would write letters to the Red Sox, and all we could do, it wasn't something like that where he needed a GED first, so there were steps he needed to take. So the best thing we could do is help him out, give him stamps in an envelope
Yep.
so he could send, his letter. But I mean, what do you
Absolutely.
do in that situation where it's
Exactly.
like the guy that wants to try for the Red Sox,
Right.
where you can't really orient them too much?
Yeah,
What do you do?
Yeah, exactly what you said. I think you did the perfect steps. You helped them write the letter. Hopefully, a little bit of reality testing in there. Okay, let's even let's pick a major league player, David Ortiz. Okay, well, let's do some research and see what he had to do to become a major league player, and help them see that comparison. Again, not saying like laughing at them.
Right.
No, this isn't going to happen for you. But and maybe well, let's look in town and see what is, again, you'd be asking their permission. Look in town and see if there's any local leagues that maybe you could play.
Okay.
And just kind of take it from there. Good. Yeah.
I don't know if it's part of motivation interviewing, but sometimes with situations like that, I'll kind of ask, well, how would your life be different if you went to Yale or became a professional baseball player, and kind of find out what's the underlying